the biggest thing for me was leaving the coaching world and being like, okay, am I losing my legitimacy? Am I losing that? And I feel like I've been able to find a really good spot where people understand that I'm not telling you what to do. I am literally providing information to you. You can take it however you want, tweak it however you want. I'm just a conduit for football speaking through me to whoever is willing to listen.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach Alexander, what's going on, brother?
Doing good, man. Glad to be on here.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I'm excited about talking to you. It's known you for, I feel like forever, man. I feel like when I was recruiting DFW, I ran into you, shoot, man, it might have been 15 years ago, and just always a familiar face whenever I'm hurrying around the convention and all that good stuff, man. So good to dive into your background a little bit. I'm excited about this one because there's a lot of stops you had I didn't even know about. Yeah. So look forward to talking to you here, and let's go ahead and dive in. So the first question we always ask on the podcast is, when did you know you want to be a part of this great profession?
I'll be honest with you, I never wanted to do anything else. My dad, for when I was growing up, worked at Hallmark because my grandfather actually did artwork in the die casting for cards. So if you bought a Hallmark card in the 80s or 90s, you probably bought something my grandfather worked on. Yeah. But my dad loved ball, and, you know, corporate America reshuffles, and he was like, you know, I just want to get out. I want to go back to coaching. I want to be around my kids more. And so I just remember my dad coming back to coaching when I was in middle school, and I was in junior high, and I essentially was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I'll be honest with you, I've told people this before, like, I'm good at like two things. I'm good at running fast in a straight line, and I'm good at like football and understanding football. Like, that's it. Like, yeah. So to me, it's like, I was like, look, I really don't want, there is no, like, I had a coach, or, you know, my father obviously is my best friend, biggest role model for that. But I don't really remember anything else. To be honest with you, the only other thing I can think of, I wanted to fly F-14 Tomcats, and when they discontinued them, I guess I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to be in the military anymore. You know, Top Gun. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just be a football coach. So that's really all I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah. Fly Tomcats or coach football.
Yeah, that was it.
I like it, man. Now, I remember running into you at one time, and you were running the convention there with your father. Is he still active in the profession right now?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm from Kansas City. He's coached in Kansas City forever. I'm from Liberty High School in the Northland. He's coached there, Winnetonka, Oak Park, basically been in the Northland forever. I tried to get him down to Texas, which is next to impossible. Finally got him a job down here. So he's still coaching. In fact, he's going to be my oldest son. He's going to be his coach next year for the next couple of years. So it's really cool. He's at the junior high here in Waxahachie, where my wife's hometown and kind of where we live. So it's really interesting. It's going to be awesome. I mean, they're best friends, so it's really cool. So yeah, he's still in the profession.
That's awesome, man. That's cool to see. That was honestly cool to see you guys kind of hitting the thing together, and you know, just have been able to bond over that. And I don't know what that's like, but just been able to navigate the profession together. I can only imagine how cool that is. Now, just talk a little bit about, I guess, how you got started, how you got your foot in the door. Your first job was at Deer Creek High School. I know you played a little college ball at Southern Nazarene. So just talk to us about how you kind of kick down the door, which typically is one of the harder things to do in a profession, is just get started, you know?
Yeah, I got really lucky. I did my student teaching at Deer Creek Middle School, and I just so happened one day I was like, I'm going to just walk over to the high school and I'm going to go get a job. Because I knew they were going to offer me the job, because the guy, again, pure luck, the guy I student taught for was literally retiring that year. So he essentially was like, we hit it off. He liked me. He's like, I'm going to groom you for this job. Basically, this job is yours. And I was like, well, I want to coach football. I don't necessarily want to coach junior high football. And so I went over and walked over to the high school. It just so happened Coach Gower was in the office that day, and they had just lost their secondary coach. And I was like, look, I'm your guy, right? So it ended up just being one of those things where right place, right time, got on there, coached for a year. My wife was still graduating. She was a year younger than me, so she was a year behind. So I knew I was going to stay in Oklahoma for another year. And so that's where I really got my start. And it was an unbelievable learning experience of being in your first year. And then I essentially ran the back end and kind of started that as my career went off. I've basically, since year one, have run the secondary everywhere I've ever been. And it was just such a learning experience with really good kids, really good coaches, learning how to be a professional when, all my experience ever was just as a player. So learning that part of the side in that year, in that first year, was really, really important for me. So yeah, that's where I got my start. And that's kind of how I transitioned from college into the high school.
Yeah. When you get that first job, and it's easy to sit on this podcast and be like, yeah, I got my first job. And I'm looking at you, I'm looking at this, 30-ish year old version of yourself. Yeah, I think that should be about right. No, actually, maybe a little older, right?
I'm still in my 30s. I'll turn 40 in January. Keep me in 30. I'm fine.
Okay, I'll put you in that $30. But you see that, but like the reality was you were a 22, 23-year-old guy.
Right.
First job. You mentioned professionalism. You mentioned some of those things that can be obstacles for guys in the first couple of years. Just one of those things that was challenging for you, maybe that you struggled with early on, and you had to kind of get over that hump to kind of have the career that you end up having.
Yeah, ego for sure. And that's something that I've struggled with really just in general. And I'm sure we'll talk about it as we keep going through my career. But, I really thought I was going to be the next Nick Saban. I really did. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I was like, I'm going to take this over. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to get this job. Like I had the stepping stones, everything. And I've written about this extensively. So if anybody that's followed me has read this story before, but just anybody that doesn't know, like I really thought I was a little bit poisoned by the fact that I did control the secondary. Like I essentially was a co-coordinator without the title everywhere I've ever been. And so doing that was one of those things where I needed to get the kids to see the game the way that I saw it. And so like learning how to be a better teacher was a really big thing. The older coaches that were there really pulling me aside and being like, hey, probably not the way you want to approach this. Hey, this is a better way of handling this. Remember, you're only a 24-year-old kid, 23, 24-year-old kid. You can't talk to grown men like that, So Just like, because and anybody that's ever interacted with me knows, like, I'm very much type A. I want things done right. I'm going to ask questions. I'm a disruptor, which is not necessarily really great in the high school coaching staff. A lot of high school head coaches don't want disruptors. They just want yes men. And so, like, as a young kid, learning how to navigate that was really, really good for me in that first year.
Yeah.
Because then it kind of, like, sets you on that path of, like, learning how to navigate interpersonal and inter-office relations.
Which, honestly, is huge, right? I mean, that's just such a big part of it. Yes. I know you had the opportunity to talk about here in a little bit at Baylor, when you go sit at the college staff room and there's no classes being taught. So you're sitting in a room with guys for 12 hours and you're that disruptor. Sometimes that can be, not a great thing, but there's a place for it, right? It is. And probably finding that balance of like, hey man, this is our game plan. But I do have a question about this. I'm going to disrupt this part because of somebody, but if it's every last thing, hey, are we going to go out there and start a morning practice? Coach, morning practice. I don't know about that. If you can't, know when to pick your times to disrupt, it can be difficult. Now, obviously you mentioned Waxahachie, that's where your wife is from. Life Waxahachie is kind of a special place because it's I think it's kind of where you started and ended your last full-time role in Texas. So talk about so this is beneficial for coaches in the profession. I feel like you're seeing a lot more now than ever, but guys crossing those state lines to go and coach in a different state. They're moving around almost like college, which is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
From Texas to Florida and Florida to Georgia. And it's not as easy as the college part because there's certifications, there's, different things and requirements that you got to have in different states. Talk about that part of jumping over that state line from Oklahoma to Texas to take your first job here in the state.
The nice thing that for me was Oklahoma, their pedagogy tests and their certification tests are all recognized by Texas. And so I qualified basically when I passed those and I got certified to teach in the state of Oklahoma. I was then certified in Texas. My wife was there. I wanted to get down to Texas as well because, look, I grew up in Kansas City. I read Friday Night Lights. I thought everything was like the movie. So I was like, well, if I'm not going to coach college, because there really wasn't an opportunity for me to coach college. I didn't want to stay at Southern Nazarene as a GA or anything like that. Those opportunities really weren't there. It's such a small program. And I wanted to go and coach college. Wasn't an opportunity for me. So I was like, look, what's the next best thing? I'll go to Texas. But anybody that's tried to get a job in the state of Texas that is not from the state of Texas or knows somebody that can give them a job. I think it was Gus Malzahn said it was easier for him to get the Auburn job than it was for him to get a job in the state of Texas or something like that. Yeah. And it's true. I experienced this firsthand with myself, and then I experienced this with my father. I coached at a very good program at the 5A level in Oklahoma for a year. And I thought, okay, well, I'll be able to at least get a DB job at the high school level around DFW. I applied everywhere and it just was not, no. Everybody said, well, you can coach junior high. You can coach junior high. And I just kept getting that. You can coach junior high. And I was like, well, that's not what I really want to do. And luckily there was a program that was kind of starting in its infancy at Life School. And so I was able to get on there. And so was my wife. And so it was just it was in her hometown. It was a program that was just starting out, and so they were just looking for anybody. And so that's kind of where I was able to get really a foothold in the state of Texas.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it was just getting started, and just talk about that approach, right? Obviously, it was your way in to be at the varsity level and all that good stuff. But just talk about now the challenges of and for those that don't know Waxahachie is just south of DeSoto, is just south of Duncanville. It's right there in that Dallas-Fort Worth, just what is about I feel like about a 10-mile radius of just juggernauts.
The Golden Triangle.
Is that what they call it these days?
Yeah, the Golden Triangle of Dallas. Yeah.
It's this Golden Triangle of Dallas. And so, it's enriched with talent. Now, I don't know what the Life School, what the situation was at that point in time, how that went down. But just describe, basically how you kind of got that thing started and rolling.
Yeah, so essentially what had happened the year before is that we had a bunch of rain. And so they were playing a kind of outlaw JV schedule. And when you're a charter school in a state that is very, very high, like it's held on tight to the public school system and making sure, if you are not familiar with Texas, private schools do not play in the public school system. There's only 2 of them. They were grandfathered in, and they have to play 6A. Then you have to play 6A big. It does not matter. So that was one of the things with charter schools is that kind of you're a public school, but you're not. Like most of our kids couldn't survive at DeSoto, Duncanville, Cedar Hill, even a Red Oak. And so they would come to Life School. And it's the same way now. It's still the same way, is that we're not getting the 4 and 5 star kids. We're getting kids that probably have never played football until their 8th or 9th grade year. And so it's very teaching intensive. It's very much, I go back to the ego of like, hey, you want to do all these things, but I've got to be able to teach these kids how to just even line up, how to even tackle, get into a stance, how to even backpedal correctly. Where do my eyes go at the beginning of the play? How do they transition through that? And so being in that kind of really sparked that. I've always been a teacher. I've always been a good teacher. I've always prided myself, and I wanted to have the highest test scores of anybody if we were doing, state testing in whatever I was teaching, or I wanted my kids to, I want to be the best class. And so I kind of teach that coaching is teaching, teaching is coaching. Yeah. And so really with that, learning too how to lose. Because, we knew when we played a lot of these teams that there was no way we were going to win, but having kind of that mental attitude of like always finding the positive through it, not necessarily silver lining, but kind of, hey, teaching these kids how to be a winner, even through losses, knowing that we're going to lose. Hey, there's going to be times where, your back's against the wall and you're not going to be able to win, but we still have to show up. We still have to do our best and kind of for those kids so that they don't become quitters later on in life. There's been several of those kids who hit me up, 5 years later and we're like, Coach, all those lessons that we learned when we were just losing all the time, I remember that, like, hey, things are going to turn around, things are going to get positive. So that class was always special to me, and that year at Life School has always been special to me.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Sometimes a job like that, that's full of hardships, not necessarily losing, not necessarily, a type of kid, or just whatever that hardship might be, and it might be those things. In your case, it was, man, sometimes when you're able to find that silver lining, I guess, of what you're getting out of that job, man, it can be so rewarding and help you grow in other areas to allow for you to be a better coach. And so,
right.
Life's got to be good, minus the L's that you're taking at that time.
Right.
Your college sweetheart, y'all near her home. You're in Texas, you're coaching ball, maybe not necessarily like you want to just quite yet in regards to, like I said, the win-loss column. But, man, life is good. But you decided to go and just blow that up and go down south and give the college thing a try. So what tempted you to go get started at Baylor in 11 as a defensive intern and ultimately end up as a GA?
Yeah, I wanted to coach college, and I think going to Life School just kind of made it even more of a burning desire. I applied. I wanted to stay close to my wife. She had a really good job. I knew I was not going to have a job. So I applied to, I called SMU, UNT, TCU, Baylor, and all of them except for Baylor were like, hey, we'll keep you on file, the whole File 13 deal. We're like, yeah, okay, I know. But Baylor was like, look, Colin Schillinglaw, I think he's working for Tyler ISD now, but he was like, look, I can't guarantee anything. I know I need help. If you can get into grad school, I'll sit you in the office and whatever happens, happens. And so I had to take the GRE. I had to and by the way, my sister's valedictorian at Liberty when she graduated. I was not, but I had a higher GRE score than her. I just want to put that out there into the universe. She went to medical school. I did not. So I just want to put that out there. Before we move on, she was a Division I athlete. I was not, but hey, I got a better GRE score than her. Yeah, so I got in. I got in, and Schillinglaw was very nice. So that first summer I'm there, I'm essentially just doing whatever that ed department. I had gotten a job with the ed department summer reading program. So I was doing that and then going into the office every day, basically every minute of the day. I figured out when I knew I was not. The one thing he was very clear on, you will not work on the offensive side of the ball. That's a family affair. And if you want to work on offense, then you might as well just don't come. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm a defensive guy anyway. Again, one of those things where right place, right time. So I figured out when Coach Bennett was going to be in the office, and he would show up at a certain time every day. And so I would make sure that I was there. I would make sure that when I came back, I stayed until he left. Remember, this is the summer, so it's summer hours. It's not like he was going, from 5 to 9 or whatever that we typically did. But I would just sit there. And luckily, I had this desk that they had rigged that it kind of stuck out of the doorway. And so I would just sit there and read, and I would go to work, read, because I was like, look, I'm at least going to get my master's degree. In the end of the day, I'm at least going to get my master's degree if this doesn't work out. And so one day, Bennett just is like, who the hell are you, dude? Like, every time I walk by you, you're just reading. And I was like, this is my opportunity. And I just waited. And I said, this is my opportunity. Hey, this is what I want to do. I'm not asking for much. I was like, can I just sit in meetings? And so I would just start sitting in meetings. And then I think this is important as young coaches, is that you have to show that you're learning what's going on. And so sometimes asking questions, I think coaches, young coaches feel like, well, if I ask questions, it's showing that I don't know. You have to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So what I knew, being a coach's son, being around football my entire life, I was like, look, I know the right questions to ask. So I would basically ask questions that I knew the answer to. I just wanted to get the affirmation from him. Okay, he's starting to pick it up. And then that kind of piqued his interest in me. And then Casey Horney, who's now back at SMU, he basically was like, look, can I offload some of this redundant work on you, like cutting cards, like recruiting board stuff, like stuff that he doesn't want to deal with, that a GA would. Because at the time, and if you know anything about Bryles, he ran a skeleton crew. We did not have any extra coaches. Like those 30 coaches you see at the SEC, no. We were down. We had as many GAs that were allowed. We had, and you could get a couple interns, right? And so I just started doing the work. Now I would finish it. I would do a really good job, and then I'd go back and ask for more. And so that's just kind of where that started. And then eventually they noticed that like I was doing a lot of the breakdowns. I was doing the film. I understood what was going on with the way that we were teaching it. And then by week 4 of that season, I was running our scout team. In fact, Bennett said, I want you to get all the scout team guys. You're going to start watching film with them. And so starting that at week 4, so I worked all summer, started in week 4 of that year of 2011, I ran the scout team all the way through until I was done in 2013.
Now, that's the story I think that people hear, and I think it motivates and inspires them. You know, a high school guy, you know, he had a school that just started, probably just went 0-10, right, and you're looking for a job. And, it's almost like you go and ask any coach, right, well, you need to send a letter to everybody that did. So you did that part. You need the one yes, where you got the one yes, and then when you get there, you need to show up and bust your butt and show your availability and show your willingness and all those kind of things. And even to your point, ask the right questions. Don't be the guy in here, hey, what's quarters coverage? Or, any of the stuff that you like, ask the right questions in the right way. And then ultimately, man, he trusts you relatively quick. I mean, for that's a big deal to have a scout look. I mean, that's a huge deal. Yeah. And so to have that responsibility as a guy that just kind of was poking out in the hallway. Bennett is my guy. I appreciate everything for him. He believed in me before I really even knew what the hell I was doing. Yeah. Now, what I do have to ask is, obviously been at Waxahachie in that first time period was a lot about your wife and her, where she was from. How did you handle those 3 years? Were you commuting from Waxahachie, or were you, how did you handle that from a personal standpoint? Yeah, so the first year we actually were not married. We were engaged, but we weren't married. Oh, okay. Yeah, but the whole point was, regardless, I was going to sell out that first year. And then we understood that. It was like, look, I'm going to come home. It's only 55 minutes. Yeah. It's less than an hour. So I was like, I'm going to come home as much as I possibly can. You can come down and visit me. I got like a shared dorm room. I was back in college. I got a shared dorm room. I had to share a dorm. I hadn't shared a dorm since I was like a sophomore in college, right? So like I had to share a dorm, like a apartment with somebody. I essentially just sold out that first year, spent as much time as I possibly could, had my nose in the computer, doing all the work that I possibly could, stayed in Waco as much as I possibly could. We got married that summer. Okay. And so then we were able to finding a house or an apartment in a college town when you're an adult and your wife works an adult job is a little bit interesting. And so we were like, some of these places we were going, it's like, it's a bunch of kids. Yeah. It's loud at night, right? Like we both had to wake up in the morning, like, you're broke because we didn't have 2 incomes, right? And Waco, I don't know, Waco is not a high dollar area. So like getting paid a lot, like she took a pay cut too to come down there. She also happened to get pregnant. And so I had Duke, my oldest, he's 12 now. I had him literally during spring practice. Mm. So, I mean, the first person that I even knew that we were pregnant was Coach Bennett. I mean, I told him, I thought I was going to get fired. I really did. I was like, oh, I've heard the horror stories. They find out, hey, no, you're in. And his deal was like, look,
I'm happy for you. Like, we're good as long as you don't change. And I was like, no. But he was always too, like, be a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he took good care of me. Like, and so I don't think I could have done it anywhere else. I've heard horror stories for GAs where they work and they sleep in the office. You know, I never was like that. We were done by 8:30, 9 o'clock every night. I did go up early, but I was close enough that I could run to home for lunch in the summer. I could, you know, there were things like that. So like Bennett was always good to me about that. It just was like, again, the beginning of this whole thing is right time, you know, right place, right time. And so we were able to navigate that relatively well, just because I think having a kid throws a huge wrench into it, because you want to be a good dad, you want to be there all the time, but you're at the college level and you're trying to establish your career. So you feel that I have to be there. And really, you're supposed to burn out. Like, you're supposed to be burning the midnight oil when you're in your mid-20s. It doesn't matter what career you are. That's when you're supposed to be hustling, so that when you're in your 30s and your 40s, you've kind of built in that system of I can now take a little bit more time. I can work about 10% less so that I can recoup some of these relationships that I kind of didn't really work on in my 20s.
Yeah, no, that's some great points. And honestly, you know, as a father, happy you were able to juggle that. I mean, because sometimes people struggle to be good at either one of them when that arises. Like, they try to spread themselves too thin, and they're not a good GA nor a good father.
Right.
And you know, when you can find that balance, and part of it is who you're working for and who you're working with, and they're able to kind of respect that balance, man, it makes life a lot easier. You don't feel like you're slacking off anywhere. And so, you know, you spent those 3 years there. You know, opportunity of a lifetime. You know, I'm a Baylor. I don't know if you know, I'm a Baylor alum myself. You know, Baylor actually was at ULM in 2012 and 13. We played you guys back to back those years. So my affiliation and ties with Baylor are huge, and that was a huge turning point for that program. A program that you know, just saw RG3 come in and win a Heisman, and you know, all the years where I played there, we were cellar dwellers, and it had been like that for decades. So I mean, just been a part of that huge turn has got to be a big deal. But that GA assistantships comes to an end, and so kind of what was next for you in regards to navigating the profession? Were you trying to stay in college? Were you trying to get back to DFW? You know, I know where you end up, but you know, what was the thought process when that GA ship was done?
Yeah, it's just look. I had a kid, so my priorities were a little bit different, because we had essentially. Baylor at that time, because of the way that some of the things that had happened in previous decades, the NCAA had imposed a lot of constraints on Baylor, primarily Baylor football. So the GA ship was actually ran through the college. It was not ran through the athletic department. So I made the exact same amount. In fact, I made less than what a TA would make working for the math department, because a lot of times those guys get put into masters dorm, like they get put into the master dorms, and it's essentially paid for. Like, I didn't have anything. I had to buy my own housing. I had to buy my own books. I had to buy my own parking permit if I wanted to park on campus. Now, eventually, I just, you know, typically what happens is they know what your car is, and they're not going to give you a ticket if you're on the football facility. But like, I had to do all that. So we're only making like $800 a month. We're $400 over between my $800 and my wife. We're $400 over just getting like an EBT card. Like, we couldn't even get food stamps, right? So I was like, look, I want to get a full-time job. And so I shot for the moon. I only applied for full-time jobs, and I had to get it to Coach Bennett. Coach Bennett called probably like 75 different colleges. Mm-hmm. It was also a really weird year in 2013. If people remember, no one got fired in 2013. Like, there was only like 12 coaches that changed. Mm. And so you just didn't get a lot of turnover. Again, I go back to right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time at the end of my GA shift, right? So that the year before Babers had left in 2011, but I didn't have a GA. So it wasn't like, hey, you need to take this kid with you. And a lot of times in this profession, everybody knows, like, you only get to move on if somebody either loses their job or moves to a different job. So you either move up or you move out with that person. No one left after that Fiesta Bowl. Coach Montgomery doesn't get the Tulsa job until the following year. Mm-hmm. And so there were some other dynamic things within the coaching, like within the coaching world at Baylor. Like it wasn't going to be a possibility. I could have probably stayed, but it's hard to stay when you can go make, 70 plus at a 6A school in DFW. And you're looking at your wife who's essentially been bootstrapping everything with a child for the last 2 years. And I didn't want to do, and you know this because you work in the profession, AFCA, you talk to guys all the time. It's that $20,000, $30,000 job. You do it 1, 2, 3 times, and then boom, like you're almost 30 by the time you might get a shot. These guys that are like, full-time coaches at 24, 25, like that's pipe dream stuff, And so I get in at the right time. So my story's awesome for the fact that like, hey, you can do this with no experience and having zero like skin in the game. Like my resume was terrible, right? But it's really a lottery on whether you're going to make it or not. Absolutely. And so I left after 2013. I mean, and it was crazy to the point where, I got cut off financially like at the end of January or at the end of February, or December. So that when I came back, everybody assumed I was going to get a job. I think that was the most frustrating part to me is that everybody told me I was going to get a job. I believed I was going to get a job. And then January rolls around, AFCA, I go home and I don't have a job. And so it was like, hey, can you guys help me out? And they're like, look, we can pay you up until the end of February. And so that luckily Shilling Law was able to find some money to pay me till the end of February. But after that, like I had a sub at Midway High School all spring. And then Jim Gush, who's now the defense coordinator at Incarnate Word, he was able to get me a job at Berkner. So I just kind of pivoted after AFCA and said, okay, I want to go coach in DFW somewhere. The only problem is, and again, I go back to struggling with ego. It's like, I was like, we just won a Big 12 championship.
Right.
I know Phil Bennett. I'm like, it's protege. I know everything about this defense. It's what, everybody's trying to learn about our defense at this time because we see Browse every day. And then we also had a top 25 defense that year with not a lot of talent. Right. So, okay. So I was like, I want to be a coordinator. And I think that was the biggest mistake I made is that I chased titles instead of chase the opportunity and chase the place that you're going to work.
Yeah.
And it burned me really bad. And and I feel like that into like being jaded, like getting mad. Like I look back at it now, like I said, I'm almost 40. I look back at it now, I was like, dude, I was never going to make it. Like it was just not going to work. Like you can't be mad at the profession. And so, here I am, I'm 26 years old, 25. I think I'm going to be the next Nick Saban, right? I think I'm going to take over football. And I'm like, well, I'm starting back at ground zero. And so you get kind of jaded in it. Like I didn't visit the facility I didn't even go to spring practice. I didn't visit the facility until like the following year. So I was just like, I was so mad.
Yeah.
But, you're young and you think that you're owed something. And you're really not. This profession doesn't owe you anything. The game continues to play whether you're in it or not. Like that's one of the things that you learn in that situation. And I thought it was a very humbling thing for me. I let it kind of eat away at me and make me feel like I was a failure. But in reality, man, for every guy that makes it, there's 100 GAs that are failed GAs.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing that I'll put on that is, and I get your point. I mean, what you're saying is exactly right. But the way your career ends up playing out, and now to be able to kind of sit in the chair that you're sitting in now, it wasn't a failure. You know what I'm saying? But
right.
If you think you're approaching this thing and I'm going to go here and go here and go here, and then I'm going to be the DC at a Big 12 school, like, man, the old saying is like, man playing, God laughs. Is like, man, football is that times 1,000. I mean, you just have no plan. You have no idea what's coming next for you. And the thing I think that's also unique is, it's kind of getting to the point now where it's like the NFL where those guys get recycled over and over and again. But for a while, when I was in a college game, man, you'll see a defensive coordinator at a big SEC school get fired and not be able to get his next job for 2 to 3 years. And so just the business is not very fair, I guess. Or
right.
I don't know the correct term, but yeah, I'm totally getting your point. So, anyways, you kind of got this chip on your shoulder at this point, Tom. Coach Gush helps you get a job at Richardson Berkner, and I'm gonna lump these together, but I do want to identify them. You spent a year at Berkner as the co-DC, secondary coach. You 15-16, you go to Lucas Lovejoy. And following that, you go to Midlothian for 3 years as the secondary coach. In 2020, you're co-DC coordinator at Mesquite, and then in we'll go back to 21 in a bit. So you get back into high school coaching. When you made a great point. You can go bounce around and struggle in high school at the collegiate level, because who knows what that next job would have been if there was one. I mean, you could have been at a Division III school making 20K and still in the same boat financially a little bit, maybe a little bit better off, but still trying to figure out how you're gonna break into it. But no, you go and make some pretty good change and have the opportunity to work on a bunch of staffs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. What would you kind of lump those years together? What were you able to grow and do over that course of time to allow for you to ultimately end up with this MatchQuarters outfit that you run now?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience at Berkner, being 26 years old, trying to lead a bunch of men in not a perfect situation, I think to me, looking back on that year probably set me in the path that I am right now. And if I don't do that, I probably don't have MatchQuarters. I'm probably not, the person I am today. It was not a good fit from the start. Like I said before, I chased the title. It was not a good fit. It wasn't a good opportunity for me personally, mentally. I kept thinking that I was just going to go back to college. Like, I'm going to spend 1 year here. And for like really the next 5 years, I get a lot of carrots, but no action, right? Like you get a lot of guys like sniffing around, like, yeah, maybe okay. But at that time, the NCAA, like if you were a high school coach, they weren't going to sign you. That you couldn't get on. Like it messed with the recruiting part of it, and then two, like when you're not in that room, it's easy to say no. Yeah. When you're in the room and you're looking at that guy and being like, "Look, man, I just helped you out to get this job. Like I just I wrote your resume for you to get this job. I helped you with your presentation to get this job, and then you're not going to take me with you. Like that's it's hard. But when you're not in the room, it's easy because it's like, well, you're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from me. I'll see you a couple times a year. It's not that big of a deal. And to me, that's what Berkner was. I realized really quickly I was in over my head, and that I needed a lot more support. I needed a lot more growth. That just because I thought that I could do something doesn't mean that I should do it, or just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. It wasn't a good fit to just where I was mentally and what I wanted. So going to Lovejoy was really, really good. Lovejoy is a very special place. Anybody that's ever worked there, like the kids are amazing. I was able to do that, but that was my first experience with a head coach getting fired. So a year into it, and this is actually the genesis of MatchQuarters. A year into being at Lovejoy, I've got everything set up. We come back from Thanksgiving break. My head coach is fired. And we had a successful season. And so like dealing with that, I'm about to hit 30. I don't like my attitude. I don't like where I'm at spiritually. I don't like where I'm at in my relationship with my wife, with my kid. I was like, dude, I've got to change. And so from that, I made a conscious decision. And in fact, it was actually that day, like that morning, I always would go in and work out really early. And I'm in our indoor, and I'm just like, God, blow this thing up. I'm done. Like I need to do completely redo. Like I'm miserable. It's been 3 or 4 years now. I don't want to live this anymore. And literally I'm walking out to go to work, and they're like, hey, we got a meeting. And I'm like, oh, here it is. He literally blew it up. So like everybody gets fired. Yeah. I'm on my own. And so I knew, luckily I wasn't the coordinator yet. I was going to be officially titled the coordinator the next year. So I was able to stay on. Todd Ford also knew Coach Bennett and Coach Gush. And so like financially, we weren't able to move because remember, I hadn't made this is only like the second year, really a year and a half of me actually making a paycheck. And so I was able to stay on, but I knew I was going to be sitting on my hands. I knew I was going to have a lot of free time. And what I just started to do was like, I'm going to get all of my thoughts that I would normally use to kind of aim at what we were doing defensively. And what if I just put this on the internet, the worst place you can possibly put it? Because I'm a big believer in Cunningham's law, which is whatever you put the wrong answer on the internet and somebody will tell you the right answer. And so I was like, what if I just put all this stuff out there? People are going to tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Luckily, people started liking it and it started growing, and I started getting to know people. And so from there, I move on to Midlothian because after a year, it was time to move on. And so I wanted to have a little bit more of an opportunity. Doug Wendell was able to give me a great opportunity of coaching in the secondary. And so like I just was working as a coach and then using those creative juices in more of a constructive way and putting it into MatchQuarters and building MatchQuarters until 2020 when we had COVID. I moved to Mesquite because I wanted, really, I wasn't going to be the coordinator at Midlothian, the defense coordinator there. He wasn't going to move, wasn't going to leave. So it's kind of like I kind of tapped out where I wanted to go. I wanted a different challenge. And so Charles Wheeler, who was the defense coordinator at Horn, was like, hey, come install your system in a 3-high defense. And that really intrigued me, especially with Horn has some athletes and it's in a really competitive district. And so I would love to work at some of these high dollar places. Like Lovejoy now is not the Lovejoy that it was when I worked there 10 years ago. And so like, I actually am like a glutton for punishment. I want to work at places that are a challenge that I'm going to have to work. I feel like I get more out of it that way. I feel like I give better to the kids that way. It challenges me more mentally. And so I went to Horn, and then from 2020, I became Substack, moved all of my stuff over. I've been, and then that's really where starting off hey, I might be able to do this full time as kind of a brand guy, like having MatchQuarters really be my full-time job.
Yeah. Now, I want to get back in MatchQuarters, but I knew it was kind of birthed during that time frame of you bouncing around a little bit in the DFW. But I kind of want to put it into the actual high school coaching era. So in 21, you kind of go back to where it all started, at least in Texas, at Life Waxahachie. First of all, what had changed over those years, there within the program? Because obviously, like you said, when you first started there, it was just trying to get the boots on the ground and get started. When you returned there as the assistant head coach, defensive coordinator, what were some of the things that just changed over time?
Yeah, I think just facilities, one, they finally had built the facility, the school. We weren't, we didn't have to travel to go to practice. Like we were traveling like 30 minutes. They had their own home field, so we didn't have to travel to Oak Cliff, which if you know anything, Waxahachie to Oak Cliff is like a 30-minute drive. Yeah. You don't want to go play your home games 30 minutes away from you. A lot kids don't come. Parents, you'd be surprised. Parents don't come. So we were able to do it at home. And I think the biggest thing for me was I was fine and content at Horn. I was going to stay one more year, but my dad had been trying. My parents had basically come to the point where they got tired of always traveling down to Dallas, and they were like, "What if we just come? Like, if I can get my dad a job, then my mom and dad will just move to Dallas." And so I was able to I knew I had always stayed connected with Life School. Yeah. And so I saw that they had an offensive coordinator job, and I was like, boom, I can get my dad a job, and then was able to get my dad. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, hey, would you want to coach with your dad? Yeah. And now I knew, again, they were better as a program. It was a real legit program because if you remember, it's been over 10 years. So it had been 10 years since I'd been there. It was a legit program at that point. Like they had kids, they had a JV team, they had a freshman team, they had middle school pipeline that was kind of moving on. Now you're still not getting the kids that you think that you're supposed to get. It's a little bit tougher because you're in 4A, you're not in 3A. But we were, I was like, look, I knew I was done. But I just wanted one more year, and I wanted to coach with my father, and I knew we weren't going to be good because everybody was like, dude, you're crazy going to Life School. Like, you're going to ruin your career. I was like, dude, it ain't about the career at this point. Like, it's a bucket list thing. So my dad and I were the world history department. We were the two world history teachers. So we'd cart around with each other because neither one of us had our own room. So we'd cart around with each other. We'd lesson plan together. And then we would obviously coach football together, and we coached against each other, which I think is really fun. Yeah. And that to me was worth it. We won one game. We got killed. We had to play Stephenville and La Vega and Brownsville, which again, like all these programs that are like legit for a program. We had to play like Liberty ILU. Like, I mean, our schedule was terrible. I don't know who did it, but it's not like that now. But it was then. Yeah, exactly. And we're playing with kids that really like I didn't have a college recruit. Like we didn't send anybody to college. In the year that I was there, like none of our seniors went to college. Like we didn't have a college football player, and we're playing teams that have at least 2 to 3 Division I football players or college kids, 3 to 4 guys that are going to go to college to play. And so to me, it was just such a growing point of like, I really wanted to play. I think the other part was, this is the last book I wrote. I wanted to put a would look like a complex system, but can you teach it to kids that have never really played football? Yeah. And then what are the lessons I can learn from that? And so that's kind of where I went. I used everything every point that I was at of like a learning opportunity to grow within the profession and grow as a teacher. And instead of like trying to be like, I'm going to run this playbook and all this, I want to see, hey, can we push these kids? Can we develop what's the best way to teach this? Hey, we're having problems here. Because look, when you have bright kids, you're not really growing. You're doing the same, you kind of get in this thing of we're like, well, we can do anything because we have these great kids. And you kind of get this inflated ego of like, well, I'm a really good coach. And when in fact, it's really just, you have really good kids that kind of win in spite of you. Yeah. Whereas when you're at that school or you're at a team that's like, maybe you can win 2 to 3 games. It's, hey, I've got to find, it's that desperation, of I've got to be able to find things that actually work. How can I get this kid to learn how to tackle? How can I get this kid to fit? How can we cover this offense that's a juggernaut offense? Like, how can we do some different things? So that to me was a lot of fun, but it was really about getting my dad and my mom, more importantly, she's the star of the show, getting my mom down here for my 3 kids, than it was necessarily like, hey, I'm going to be, this is a career stepping stone for me.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you were able to kind of set up the, kind of final chapter, at least of actively coaching, at least for now too, because I could definitely see you getting back into the profession. You might think otherwise, I don't know, but obviously for now, kind of put a storybook in and be able to coach with your dad, have some conversations, game plan, lesson plan, and all those kind of things together. Man, it had to be special. Now you step into this world of MatchQuarters, and I kind of perking up a little bit here because I do think we're in an interesting time, obviously, with social media where, you're a content creator essentially, right? And I know that for you probably is more, you are an educator. You're not just creating content, you're trying to educate coaches. And there is a thin line in order to kind of build a brand and all those kind of things. How did you go about, understanding the internet, understanding social media, understanding the ways to kind of get your message out there to the point where, I've been on multiple podcasts where guys are like, man, yeah, I can sit on the toilet and watch MatchQuarters or, Dan Casey's videos and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's pretty cool that, people kind of resonate to the content that you put out. But how did you learn that? How did you learn to get good at that, I guess?
Yeah, trial and error, really, to be honest with you, at the beginning of just trying to like figure out what works, what people like, what people don't. I think the biggest thing that I did was really lean into what I'm an expert at, which is coverages, and primarily quarters coverage. Now, the joke is it's MatchQuarters, which I did it kind of tongue in cheek, creating it because I wanted it to be like, it's not, look, I write about everything under the moon, defensive football, but MatchQuarters is always going to be the foundation of where I'm anchored, where everything that I do is anchored in. So like that was the biggest thing for me is like, I'm going to write about what I know. And then as my circle of competency gets big, I'm going to then start pushing out into different areas to learn different ways people are running quarters. I'm going to learn different ways people are structuring their fronts. And then a lot of this is just my exploratory of going through one year we needed to run an odd front instead of and a 4-down front. Okay, well, I'm going to go and learn about Aranda. I'm going to go learn about the East Coast 3-4. I'm going to learn about some of these other different iterations of the 3-4 that I can learn. And then how can I then manufacture quarters behind it? That's why like Aranda stuff like really clicked with me because I was like, well, he's trying to run a bunch of zone coverage. I like zone coverage. And so trying to get in that. So that to me is essentially like, I'm just putting out my journey within football out into the universe and studying these things, what I find interesting. And then eventually now I'm to the point where I'm watching a lot more NFL. I've tried kind of transition to more to the NFL just because, look, I do this full time. This feeds my family, this pays my mortgage. That's really where the money is. College football is super, super regional. And it's kind of flooded with a bunch of like fan accounts, right? So like I want to do more or less like very deep dives into schematics, hey, quick hits on what are different ways of attacking protection blitzes. And so like doing that and then just kind of that ebb and flow of, people weren't really interested in that. Okay, keep that in as a reminder. Hey, people really love this. Okay, I can kind of, what are some different branches? Because I don't want to recycle content and I don't want to recycle the same concept over and over. Like, for instance, I did the Fangio split field stuff. Well, it's a little bit different than the Ravens split field stuff that we're seeing now. And so how are teams doing that? The 5-man, what's really big right now is quarter 5-man pressures. Okay. Well, the way the Vikings do it is different than some of these other teams, like the Chiefs are doing it. Right. So, and the Chiefs are really kind of like Spagnuolo is the one, the tango pressures. He's kind of the godfather of this whole thing from Jim Johnson and the Eagles. So like, that's the other thing. I think too, I'm a historian at heart. So I try and understand the background of this. I think the reason why people like what I have is it's whether you're a high school coach or an NFL coach, you can pull something from this. It's not, I think that's the biggest thing is like college, NFL guys are looking for ideas. That's easy. I sell ideas all day. That's essentially what MatchQuarters is. High school coaches looking at Georgia or looking at, the Eagles. Sometimes it's hard for them to see, well, how does that help me? And my argument is always, look, what works at your level is the exact same thing that works at this level. Yeah, they've got the elite. They've got a bunch of 1%ers. They got a bunch of aliens, but they're actually solving a lot more extreme problems because the talent level is razor thin. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's certain things that they do that are kind of wonky. I don't necessarily try and share those. Yeah, I try and share, hey, look at the way that the Ravens are running their fire zones. Okay, everybody runs fire zones, that from the high school level all the way up to the NFL. Yeah. Hey, this is the way that they're running it. It's pretty interesting. This is a way that you can run a fire zone on third down to overload one side, but still get that 3-by-3 coverage. Hey, this is a way that this team's running quarters. This is the way that this team is doing their front structure to fit the run. Hey, here's an interesting run fit. And so to me, it's always been about education. And I think because of that, I'm also not a playbook guy. I don't post a bunch of playbook shots. I don't adhere to one playbook. I'm not a Saban guy. I'm not an Aranda guy. I'm not a Venables guy. I'm not a Belichick guy. I'm not a guy. I have my own way of wording things, but I'm essentially like Babel for defensive football coaches. I'm just trying to figure out what people are using and what's the correct term and then what's kind of the broad term. And then let's all meet in the middle because look, defensive language. And this is why you brought up Dan Casey. Offensive guys, man, they'll work. Hey, that's a cool play. What do you call that? How do you do that? Hey, this is how we do it. Defensive guys are like, nope, never. No, I'm not doing that. I don't believe in that. Or, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Quit sharing that. Like I'll get coaches like, you gotta quit sharing some of this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like we're all trying to get to the same answers. Right. Right. And so it's like defensive guys, like I have like what 25% of the growth that Dan does just because I'm like on the wrong side of the ball. And it's just that's just it. But you know what? That's okay. Right. And it's okay because you talked about it. Like the biggest thing for me was leaving the coaching world and being like, okay, am I losing my legitimacy? Am I losing that? And I feel like I've been able to find a really good spot where people understand that I'm not telling you what to do. Yeah. I am literally providing information to you. You can take it however you want, tweak it however you want. I'm just a conduit for football speaking through me to whoever is willing to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, you made an excellent point there, and kind of one of your last sentences that really resonates with me. I know right when I got out of the profession, I guess I technically didn't get out of the profession, but right when I kind of got done coaching and decided I was taking this job at the AFCA, man, I was still, and I had coached college for the last decade. I was still like at 5 o'clock everybody in the office is getting out of here. And I'm like, man, we just getting started. And, I need to get up on the board and draw stuff. And I'm like, man, nobody's in here, and so we started making some content, some educational content. And it was all the cool drills and all the cool concepts that, I had been exposed to. And then after a couple of years, I was like, man, I hadn't been doing it. I don't want to lose my legitimacy. And that was honestly a little bit of the birth of the podcast, where it was something that I felt like, no matter what, those years that you just experienced, that we just talked about as a coach, those aren't going to change. And so it's funny when you're really trying to find your niche in, educating the way that people consume these days, because it's different. You're right. Yeah, I can just go show a cool ass play, on the offense and be like, hey man, look at this play, and everybody goes crazy because it's a trick play. And, in defense, what's a trick play in defense? I mean, the coolest thing I think I've seen is maybe Iowa State 3-high deal where everybody's going crazy over that thing, and it's like, other than that, it's not really much. And so being able to educate, and that's why I appreciate yours. And I thought what was really cool was, I don't comment much on Instagram, like just with anybody, but I ran across one of your posts, and it was something receiver specific, and I wrote some, and the amount of coaches that were kind of liking the comment or responding to the comment was pretty cool. And I was like, this is different, because it's not fans, it's not guys that are play Madden, or I'm just a fan of the Bills. It's guys that the coach. They understood what this guy's responsibility was supposed to be. So it seems like you've captured a great market, of guys that can read your content, find a way to apply it or not, right? I mean, that's a part of it, right? Find a way to process it or not. But in that, they're learning because they're saying, hey, I'm not processing this. I'm not taking this because, and that's sometimes that's great, right? And I think you probably recognize that when you can say, hey, man, we don't run a route like this because blank. So we've put thought into it before, man. So anywho, I get off my soapbox, man. You do a heck of a job, man. I love kind of combing through your content. I'm an offensive guy, so any opportunity I have to learn defensive play. So all my analogies, even right now, I'm giving you offensive analogies to a defensive guy. They make sense. But anyways, man, we were talking around the office here. MatchQuarters kept coming up, and I was like, man, we need to hit the guy up. He's a cool dude. And man, I've enjoyed being able to kind of dive into your history, and man, probably more nuggets than I expected for coaches, as you navigated your career, and were able to kind of share with some transparency in regards to, ego, the things that we battle as coaches, and some of the things like that. And I know it'll be helpful for our coaches out here, man. But before I let you go, I know obviously we probably have a listener or two that has not heard of MatchQuarters, so I want to make sure you have an opportunity to plug in your socials so guys can follow, keep up, ask questions, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can. MatchQuarters.com is the best place to go. It has links to everything. If you want to follow me on X, it's at @the_coach_A, and then really anywhere you social, YouTube, IG, TikTok, it's MatchQuarters, one word, and you should be able to find it. I post something every day other than Tuesday and Sunday, I think, at this point. So I just started a podcast, Let's Talk Ball, where I'm trying to dig a little bit more scheme-specific football show that actually talks football, centered around the NFL. We're going to do some college stuff during the season, but right now we're doing our NFL preview. So anything you want defensively, I want to say too, like, defense for whatever reason is so much gatekept, and it has been forever. And I think it's changing, especially with my generation of coaches that are willing to be, talk a little bit more about the inner workings of defense. I think offense has always kind of been an open forum for people to talk, whereas defense has always kind of been more kind of like, box score watching. Whereas I think some of these guys, some of the best coaches I've ever met are at programs that you would not think are very successful, but they're being able to kind of stabilize a lot of situations that aren't there. So thanks for having me on and being able to talk about MatchQuarters and just really talk ball just in general. Yeah,
no doubt, man. We enjoyed it, man, and look forward to staying in touch with you. Hopefully bump into you into a convention, here in Charlotte, okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
You too.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to afca.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.